The sun hung low over Earth's horizon, casting long shadows across the Pacific Ocean. It was a serene morning, until the sky itself seemed to tear apart. A shimmering rift opened high above the atmosphere, spilling out an alien armada that blotted out the stars. Ships of impossible size descended like thunderclouds, their metallic hulls gleaming with cold precision. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now, they regretted asking. Dr. Elena Kovalenko watched the spectacle unfold from her lab at the International Space Research Center, ISRC, in Geneva. She stood frozen before a bank of monitors displaying real-time satellite feeds. Her hands trembled as she adjusted the contrast on one screen, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. For years, she had warned the world about this exact scenario: extraterrestrial civilizations far more advanced than humanity. But no one had listened. Governments dismissed her theories as alarmist nonsense, and funding for planetary defense initiatives dried up decades ago. Now here it was, proof of intelligent life beyond Earth, and it wasn't friendly. "They're here," she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible over the hum of machinery. "They're really here." Commander Marcus Hale received the same transmission aboard the USS Invincible, a state-of-the-art orbital defense platform stationed near geosynchronous orbit. He clenched his jaw as he stared at the holographic display showing the positions of the alien fleet. There were hundreds of ships, each larger than any human vessel ever constructed. Some resembled sleek daggers slicing through space, while others looked like floating fortresses bristling with weapons. Whatever these beings were, they weren't interested in diplomacy. "Sir, we're detecting energy signatures consistent with plasma-based weaponry," reported Lieutenant Sarah Chen, his second in command. Her voice wavered slightly but remained professional. "Their shield technology is off the charts. We can't penetrate it." Hale nodded grimly. "Understood. Prepare all defensive systems. And send word to Earth Command. We need every available asset online immediately." As orders crackled through comms channels, panic rippled across the globe. News outlets scrambled to cover the unfolding crisis, broadcasting live footage of the alien fleet hovering ominously above Earth. Social media erupted with fear and speculation. Some prayed for salvation, others called for retaliation, and many simply waited in stunned silence, unable to comprehend the scale of the threat. Meanwhile, halfway around the world in Hong Kong, Lila Zhao sat hunched over her laptop in a cramped apartment cluttered with tech gadgets. At just 24 years old, she was already one of the most skilled hackers in the world, a reputation earned during her teenage years when she exposed corruption within major corporations. But today her focus wasn't on corporate secrets or government conspiracies. As soon as the alien fleet appeared, she hacked into unsecured military satellites to gather data. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as lines of code scrolled down the screen. Something about the aliens' communication signals intrigued her. They pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat, but there was an underlying pattern she couldn't quite decipher. Was it encrypted, automated, or something else entirely? Lila leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples. "Come on, you bastards," she muttered under her breath. "Let me see what makes you tick." Elsewhere, Dr. Kovalenko continued analyzing the situation from her lab. She pulled up archived research papers detailing her earlier predictions about extraterrestrial contact. One document caught her eye, a theoretical paper she'd co-authored years ago, hypothesizing how advanced civilizations might approach interstellar conquest. According to her calculations, such species would likely rely on overwhelming force combined with psychological warfare to demoralize their opponents quickly. A sudden alert interrupted her thoughts. An incoming message flashed across her monitor. "Priority transmission, alien broadcast detected." Heart pounding, she clicked play. The voice that emerged from the speakers wasn't human. It was deep, resonant, and utterly devoid of emotion. Though distorted by translation algorithms, the words were clear enough. "To the inhabitants of this planet, hear us. You have been deemed unworthy of autonomy. Surrender now, and we will spare your species from extinction. Resist, and you will be annihilated. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. She knew this tone, calm, detached, and utterly certain of victory. These invaders didn't view humans as equals. They saw them as pests to be exterminated, and judging by the sheer size of their fleet, they had every reason to feel confident. Back aboard the Invincible, Commander Hale prepared for battle. He barked orders to his crew, ensuring every weapon system was primed and ready. Despite the odds, he refused to give up without a fight. Humanity might not win this war, but they could damn well make the enemy pay for every inch of ground they took. "All stations report green," announced Lieutenant Chen. "Weapons hot. Shields at maximum capacity." "Good," Hale replied. "Now let's show these bastards what happens when you mess with Earth." At precisely 0847 UTC, the Vryn launched their first assault. Dozens of smaller ships broke formation and accelerated toward Earth's orbital defenses. Plasma bolts streaked through space, striking the Invincible and other platforms with devastating force. Within seconds, shields began to falter, and hull breaches erupted across multiple vessels. On the ground, people watched in horror as fireballs rained down from the heavens. Cities burned, oceans boiled, and millions perished in an instant. The United Earth Council convened an emergency session, but their deliberations devolved into chaos as reports poured in from every corner of the globe. Entire nations were wiped, off the map, reduced to ash and rubble. Amidst the carnage, Lila made a breakthrough. After hours of relentless coding, she isolated a fragment of the Vryn's communication signal. It wasn't just noise. It contained structured information. Binary sequences repeated at regular intervals, suggesting some form of machine language. If she could decode it fully, she might uncover a weakness in their systems. But time was running out. The Vryn pressed their advantage, systematically dismantling Earth's orbital defenses. The Invincible suffered catastrophic damage, forcing its crew to abandon ship. Commander Hale ordered an evacuation, staying behind to ensure his team escaped safely. As the last escape pod launched, he activated the platform's self-destruct sequence, hoping to take a few enemy ships with him. Explosions lit up the void as the Invincible disintegrated in a brilliant flash of light. Below, survivors retreated into underground bunkers, praying for a miracle. Above, the alien fleet loomed larger than ever, seemingly unstoppable. In her lab, Dr. Kovalenko sifted through classified files, searching for anything that could turn the tide. Her eyes widened as she stumbled upon references to Project Prometheus. Decades ago, during the height of the Cold War, scientists had theorized the existence of quantum entanglement-based weapons, capable of bypassing even the strongest shields. Though never completed due to budget constraints, remnants of the project still existed in secure facilities scattered across the globe. This could work," she murmured, heart racing. "If we can reactivate it." Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. Turning, she saw Lila standing there, clutching a tablet filled with decoded data. Their eyes met, and for the first time in hours, a flicker of hope passed between them. "We've got something," Lila said urgently. "It's not much, but it's a start." Dr. Kovalenko nodded. "Then let's get to work. Because if we don't stop them, none of us will survive." As night fell over the shattered remains of Earth, two women, one seasoned scientist, the other a young hacker, began piecing together humanity's last, desperate chance at survival. Outside, the Vryn fleet maintained its menacing vigil, their glowing engines casting eerie shadows across the ruins below. Humanity's darkest hour had arrived, but even in the face of annihilation, the spark of resistance refused to die. The world had changed overnight, or so it seemed. What remained of Earth was scarred, broken, and shrouded in despair. Cities once teeming with life now lay silent, their streets littered with debris and ash. The air was thick with smoke from burning buildings, and the skies above were perpetually darkened by the shadow of the Vryn fleet. Yet beneath this desolation, humanity clung to hope, determined not to surrender without a fight. Commander Marcus Hale had barely escaped the destruction of the USS Invincible. Burned, bruised, and grieving the loss of his crew, He emerged as a reluctant symbol of resistance. News of his survival spread quickly among the scattered survivors, inspiring those who thought all was lost. He convened what was left of Earth's military leadership in an underground bunker near Geneva, where Dr. Elena Kovalenko and Lila Zhao were already hard at work analyzing the data they had gathered. The bunker buzzed with activity. Soldiers patched together makeshift weapons from salvaged parts, engineers worked tirelessly to repair damaged drones, and medics treated the wounded under dim fluorescent lights. It wasn't much, but it was enough to keep the flame of defiance alive. Hale stood before a holographic map of Earth projected onto the wall. Red markers indicated areas still under attack, while green ones represented pockets of resistance. "We're outnumbered, outgunned, and outmatched," he began, addressing the room. "But we've got something the Vryn don't. Grit, determination, and most importantly, home field advantage." His words drew nods of approval, though skepticism lingered in some eyes. How could mere determination stand up to an enemy that had wiped out entire cities in seconds? Still, Hale pressed on. "Our first priority is intelligence. We need to understand how these bastards operate if we're going to take them down." Dr. Kovalenko stepped forward, her expression grim but resolute. "I believe I've found something that could help us." She tapped a few commands into her tablet, and the hologram shifted to display schematics of an ancient project labeled Project Prometheus. This was developed decades ago during the Cold War, a theoretical quantum weapon designed to bypass even the strongest shields. It was abandoned due to cost overruns, but remnants of the research are stored in secure facilities worldwide. Lila raised an eyebrow. "Remnants? You mean like half-finished prototypes?" "Exactly," Kovalenko replied. "If we can retrieve those components and reactivate the system, we might have a chance." "And if we can't?" asked Lieutenant Sarah Chen, who had survived the Invincible's destruction alongside Hale. Kovalenko hesitated before answering. "Then we're looking at extinction." The weight of her words hung heavy in the air. No one spoke for several moments until Hale broke the silence. "Then there's no time to waste. We'll divide into teams. Some will focus on gathering resources, others on launching guerrilla attacks to buy us time. Meanwhile, Dr. Kovalenko and Lila will lead the effort to recover Project Prometheus, scavenging for survival." The days that followed, small groups of soldiers ventured into the ruins of fallen cities to scavenge supplies. These missions were fraught with danger. Vryn patrols roamed the surface, hunting down any signs of human activity, but necessity drove them onward. They salvaged weapons, ammunition, food, and anything else that could aid the resistance. One such group, led by Lieutenant Chen, infiltrated the wreckage of Paris, which had been reduced to a smoldering crater. Among the rubble, they discovered a cache of experimental plasma rifles developed by the European Defense Initiative. Though untested, the weapons offered a glimmer of hope against the Vryn's superior firepower. "We can't rely on brute force alone," Chen reminded her team as they loaded the rifles onto a transport vehicle. "Every shot counts. Every move matters." Meanwhile, other teams focused on sabotage. Guerrilla tactics became the backbone of humanity's defense strategy. Using hit-and-run attacks, they targeted vulnerable points in the Vryn fleet's supply lines. While these efforts inflicted minimal damage compared to the aliens' overwhelming arsenal, they succeeded in slowing the invaders' advance and boosting morale among the survivors. Decoding the enemy back in the bunker, Lila Zhao worked tirelessly to decode more of the Vryn's communication signals. Her earlier discovery, that the aliens relied on a centralized neural network to coordinate their fleet, had been a breakthrough, but accessing that network would require direct contact with one of their command ships. For now, she focused on piecing together fragments of their language. She spent hours poring over binary sequences, cross-referencing them with linguistic databases and running simulations. Slowly but surely, patterns began to emerge. The Vryn's transmissions weren't just orders or status updates. They contained vast amounts of cultural and historical information. One recurring theme stood out: conquest. "They see themselves as gods," Lila muttered to herself late one night, her eyes bloodshot from staring at screens. Their entire society is built around domination. That's why they view us as inferior. Dr. Kovalenko joined her shortly afterward, carrying 2 cups of lukewarm coffee. Any progress? Maybe, Lila replied, gesturing to her monitor. Look here. This sequence repeats every time they issue a new directive. It's almost like a key. A key to what? To their neural network, Lila said excitedly. If we can replicate it, we might be able to hack into their systems remotely, but doing so would risk exposure, and if they catch us, they'll trace the signal back to its source. Kovalenko frowned. Which means whoever attempts this will likely die. I know, Lila said quietly, but someone has to do it. Reactivating Project Prometheus. While Lila decoded the Vrin's secrets, Dr. Kovalenko led a team to Area 51, where remnants of Project Prometheus were rumored to be stored. The journey was perilous, requiring them to navigate through hostile territory infested with alien drones. When they finally reached the facility, they found it heavily fortified, not by humans but by automated security systems left behind when the base was abandoned. After disabling the defenses, Kovalenko and her team descended into the bowels of the complex. Dust-covered shelves lined the walls, holding crates marked with cryptic labels. Inside, they discovered partially assembled components of the quantum weapon, along with detailed blueprints and technical manuals. This is it, Kovalenko whispered, running her fingers over a gleaming metal core. With this, we can build something capable of taking down their fleet. But reassembling the weapon wouldn't be easy. Many parts were missing or damaged, and the technology was decades ahead of its time. Even worse, the process required enormous amounts of energy, far more than their current resources allowed. We'll need to improvise, Kovalenko told her team. Use whatever materials we have on hand. Sacrifice non-essential systems if necessary. This weapon doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to work. As the engineers began their work, Kovalenko couldn't shake the feeling that time was slipping away. Every day brought new reports of devastation above ground. The Vrin showed no signs of relenting, and each passing hour brought them closer to total victory. A desperate plan weeks turned into months as humanity fought tooth and nail to survive. Guerrilla attacks grew bolder, striking deeper into enemy territory. Supplies dwindled, forcing rationing measures that tested the limits of endurance. Yet amidst the chaos, a plan began to take shape. Using Lila's decoded data, Commander Hale devised a daring mission. Board a Vrin command ship, upload a virus to disrupt their neural network, and simultaneously activate Project Prometheus to deliver the killing blow. It was risky, suicidal even, but it represented their best chance at turning the tide. Hale called a meeting to outline the operation. We're sending a small team to infiltrate one of their ships, he explained. Once inside, they'll upload the virus and disable their coordination systems. At the same time, Dr. Kovalenko will fire the Prometheus weapon, targeting their central fleet. If everything goes according to plan, we'll cripple their forces and force them to retreat. And if it doesn't, asked Lieutenant Chen. Then, we go down fighting, Hale said firmly. But we won't let them win without paying a price. Volunteers stepped forward immediately, eager to contribute to the cause. Among them were Lila Zhao and Commander Hale himself. Despite protests from his subordinates, Hale insisted on leading the mission personally. If we fail, humanity needs someone willing to make the ultimate sacrifice, he declared. That someone is me. Preparation and resolve. The days leading up to the mission passed in a blur of activity. Engineers worked around the clock to finalize Project Prometheus, while Lila fine-tuned the virus she had created. Pilots trained rigorously, preparing for the high-stakes dogfights that awaited them. Morale remained fragile, but the knowledge that they were about to strike back gave everyone a renewed sense of purpose. On the eve of the operation, Hale gathered his team for a final briefing. Tomorrow we face the greatest challenge of our lives, he said. Some of us may not return, but remember this. We're fighting for something bigger than ourselves, for our families, for our future, for Earth. As the room erupted in cheers, Lila approached him privately. "You don't have to do this, you know," she said softly. "Let someone else lead the mission." Hale shook his head. "Someone has to ensure it succeeds. And besides," he paused, looking at her with a mixture of pride and sadness, "you remind me of my daughter. If I can give people like you a chance to live in peace, then it's worth it." Lila nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "Just promise me one thing." "What's that?" "Make sure we win." Hale smiled faintly. "Count on it." Above ground, the Vryn fleet loomed as menacingly as ever, oblivious to the storm brewing below. Humanity's darkest hour had arrived, but so too had its moment of reckoning. With every ounce of courage and ingenuity they possessed, the survivors prepared to strike back against the invaders who had dared to threaten their home. And somewhere deep within the heart of the resistance, a single thought echoed louder than any explosion. We will not fall. The night before the operation was eerily quiet, a deceptive calm that masked the chaos about to unfold. In the underground bunker, engineers made final adjustments to Project Prometheus, ensuring every component functioned perfectly. Pilots reviewed flight paths, memorizing escape routes and contingency plans. Meanwhile, Commander Marcus Hale led his infiltration team through one last briefing, emphasizing the importance of timing and precision. "This isn't just a mission," he said, his voice steady but firm. "It's our chance to prove that humanity won't go quietly into the void. Stick to the plan, watch each other's backs, and remember why we're doing this." Among the team members stood Lila Zhao, her expression resolute despite the fear gnawing at her insides. She clutched a small device containing the virus she had spent weeks crafting, a digital weapon designed to cripple the Vryn's neural network. If successful, it would disrupt their coordination systems, leaving their fleet vulnerable to attack. Dr. Elena Kovalenko watched from a distance, her heart heavy with both pride and dread. She knew the odds were stacked against them, but she also understood that this was their only shot at survival. As the clock ticked closer to launch time, she approached Hale for a private word. "Commander," she began, her tone measured but tinged with emotion, "you don't have to do this. Let someone else lead the team." Hale shook his head, meeting her gaze with unwavering determination. "Someone has to ensure the mission succeeds, and if I can buy everyone else a fighting chance, then it's worth it." Kovalenko opened her mouth to argue but stopped herself. Instead, she placed a hand on his shoulder. "Just come back alive if you can." He offered a faint smile. "I'll do my best." Launch and infiltration at dawn, the Resistance launched its counterattack. A squadron of stealth fighters, modified with cloaking technology reverse-engineered from the crashed Vryn scout ship, emerged from hidden bunkers and streaked toward the alien fleet. Their engines emitted barely a whisper, masking their approach, as they navigated through the dense cloud of enemy vessels. Inside the lead fighter, Hale gripped the controls tightly, his knuckles white. Beside him sat Lila, clutching the virus-laden device like a lifeline. Behind them flew 3 additional ships, each carrying a mix of soldiers and engineers tasked with supporting the infiltration. As they neared the flagship, a colossal vessel, bristling with weapons and glowing conduits, the tension inside the cockpit became palpable. "We're entering the danger zone," Hale announced over the comms. "Prepare for boarding." With surgical precision, the fighters latched onto docking ports along the flagship's hull. Magnetic clamps secured the ships in place, allowing the team to disembark undetected. Clad in black tactical suits equipped with EMP disruptors, they moved swiftly through maintenance corridors, avoiding patrols of Vryn soldiers. The aliens towered over them, their elongated limbs and metallic exoskeletons casting ominous shadows in the dimly lit passageways. Each step brought new challenges: automated turrets, biometric locks, and patrol drones programmed to detect intruders. But the team pressed on, guided by Lila's decrypted maps of the ship's interior. High-stakes confrontation, reaching the central control hub required traversing multiple security checkpoints, each more heavily guarded than the last. At one point, the team encountered a group of Vryn technicians huddled around a console. Without hesitation, Hale signaled for silence. motioning 2 soldiers forward to neutralize the threat. Using silenced pistols, they dispatched the technicians, quickly and efficiently, dragging their bodies out of sight. Lila paused briefly to examine the console, her fingers flying across the holographic interface. "This is it," she whispered. "The mainframe connecting the neural network. If we upload the virus here, it should propagate throughout the entire fleet." "But how long will it take?" asked one of the soldiers. "Minutes," Lila replied. "But those minutes will feel like hours." Hale nodded. "Then let's make sure we hold this position until it's done." As Lila plugged the device into the system, alarms blared throughout the ship. The Vryn had detected the intrusion. Reinforcements poured into the corridor, forcing the team to form a defensive perimeter around the control hub. Plasma bolts ricocheted off walls, filling the air with acrid smoke and deafening noise. "Keep them busy," Hale shouted, firing his rifle with deadly accuracy. "We're not leaving until Lila finishes." The battle raged on, testing the limits of endurance for everyone involved. Soldiers fell one by one, their sacrifices buying precious seconds for the mission to succeed. Through it all, Lila remained focused, her eyes locked on the progress bar inching steadily toward completion. Sacrifice and success. Just as the virus reached 90% deployment, a massive explosion rocked the ship. The Vryn had breached the outer hull, attempting to cut off the team's escape route. Flames licked at the edges of the corridor, and the temperature soared dangerously high. "We're running out of time," yelled one of the remaining soldiers. "I'm almost there," Lila responded, sweat dripping down her face. Her hands trembled as she input the final commands. Hale glanced at the dwindling number of defenders. Only a handful remained, including himself. He turned to Lila, his expression grim but resolute. "You need to leave. Now." "What about you?" she demanded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I'll hold them off," he said simply. "Go," before she could protest. Hale shoved her toward the exit, covering her retreat with suppressive fire. One by one, the remaining soldiers followed suit, sacrificing themselves to ensure her escape. By the time Lila reached the docking bay, the virus had fully deployed, spreading chaos throughout the Vryn fleet. Back aboard the flagship, Hale fought valiantly against overwhelming odds. His ammunition depleted, he resorted to hand-to-hand combat, using brute force to incapacitate Vryn soldiers. Though gravely injured, he refused to yield, knowing that every second bought Earth a little more time. Finally, as reinforcements closed in, Hale triggered an emergency self-destruct sequence within the flagship. The countdown began, giving Lila and the surviving team members just enough time to reach their fighters and disengage from the doomed vessel. Firing Prometheus as the team fled, Dr. Kovalenko activated Project Prometheus from the safety of the underground bunker. The quantum weapon hummed to life, channeling immense energy into a single concentrated beam. When it fired, the resulting explosion tore through the heart of the Vryn fleet, obliterating dozens of ships in an instant. Above ground, the sky lit up with fiery streaks as debris rained down from orbit. Survivors emerged from their shelters, staring in awe at the spectacle unfolding above. For the first time in months, hope flickered in their hearts. In the aftermath, Lila stared at the monitor displaying the crippled Vryn fleet, her mind racing with conflicting emotions. They had won for now, but at great cost. Commander Hale's sacrifice weighed heavily on her conscience, yet she knew his actions had saved countless lives. "He did it," she murmured, her voice cracking with emotion. "He gave us a future, Doctor." Kovalenko placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Yes, he did, but the fight isn't over." Indeed, as the dust settled, Lila detected something ominous in the dying moments of the battle, an encrypted message sent from the flagship before its destruction. It hinted at reinforcements en route, signaling that humanity's struggle was far from finished. The battle was over, but the scars it left behind would never fully heal. Earth lay broken, its cities reduced to rubble, and its skies stained with ash. Yet amidst the devastation, there was a fragile sense of triumph. Humanity had stared into the abyss, and refused to blink. Against all odds, they had fought back, and won. In the days following the destruction of the Vryn fleet, survivors emerged from their bunkers to assess the damage. Rescue teams scoured the ruins for signs of life, pulling survivors from collapsed buildings and tending to the wounded. Makeshift hospitals sprang up in parks and stadiums, staffed by doctors working tirelessly to save as many lives as possible. It was a grim scene, yet moments of hope pierced through the despair. Reunited families, children laughing despite everything, and strangers helping one another without hesitation. Lila Zhao stood on the edge of what used to be Central Park, now a sprawling refugee camp filled with tents and makeshift shelters. She clutched a tablet displaying telemetry data from the remnants of the Vryn fleet. Though the aliens' presence had been eradicated from Earth's orbit, her mind couldn't shake the ominous message she'd intercepted during the final moments of the battle. Reinforcements were coming, a far greater force than the Vryn alone. She turned to find Dr. Elena Kovalenko approaching, her face lined with exhaustion but determination. "Any updates?" Kovalenko asked, gesturing to the tablet. Lila nodded reluctantly. "I've decrypted part of the message. It's not just reinforcements, they're calling for an extermination fleet. Something called the Zainari Dominion. They're bigger than we imagined." Kovalenko sighed, rubbing her temples. Of course they are. Nothing ever comes easy, does it? Despite the looming threat, humanity celebrated its improbable victory. News outlets broadcast images of the shattered Vryn fleet, hailing the resistance fighters as heroes. Commander Marcus Hale's sacrifice became legend. Statues were erected in his honor, and stories of his bravery inspired millions. In Geneva, world leaders convened to discuss reconstruction efforts and prepare for the inevitable next wave of alien aggression. But celebration gave way to sober reflection as the scale of the loss became clear. Billions had perished in the initial assault, and entire ecosystems had been irrevocably damaged. Climate systems were disrupted, oceans poisoned, and fertile lands rendered barren. Survivors faced starvation, disease, and displacement on a global scale. Rebuilding would take decades, if it could even be done at all. Rebuilding and reflection, Dr. Kovalenko threw herself into Project Prometheus, determined to ensure humanity wouldn't face the Zainari unprepared. With the help of Lila and other scientists, she transformed the experimental weapon into a planet-wide defense grid. Orbital platforms armed with quantum cannons were constructed around Earth, forming a shield capable of repelling large-scale attacks. Factories churned out advanced drones and fighter jets reverse-engineered from Vryn technology, giving humanity a fighting chance against superior foes. Meanwhile, Lila delved deeper into the Vryn's encrypted transmissions, searching for weaknesses in the Zainari Dominion. Her work consumed her, driving her to the brink of collapse. Sleepless nights blurred into endless days as she analyzed every byte of data, piecing together fragments of information about their enemy. What she uncovered chilled her to the bone. "The Zainari aren't just conquerors," she explained to Kovalenko during one late-night session. "They're assimilators. They absorb conquered species into their empire, stripping them of autonomy and turning them into tools for further expansion. If they reach Earth, they'll erase us." Kovalenko finished grimly. "We won't just be wiped out, we'll be erased from existence." Lila nodded. "Exactly. And based on these calculations, they'll arrive within 2 years, maybe less." The weight of that timeline hung heavy between them. 2 years wasn't nearly enough time to rebuild, let alone mount a defense capable of stopping the Zainari. But surrender wasn't an option, not after everything they'd endured. A new purpose. In the months that followed, Lila found solace in honoring Commander Hale's memory. She often visited the memorial erected in his name, sitting quietly beneath the towering statue as she reflected on his sacrifice. Hale had given everything to buy humanity a fighting chance, and Lila vowed to make his death count. "He believed in you," Kovalenko said one evening, joining her at the memorial. "He saw something in you, a spark. That's why he pushed you to keep going when things seemed hopeless." Lila smiled faintly. "I just wish I could have saved him." "You did," Kovalenko replied firmly. You completed the mission. You made sure his sacrifice wasn't in vain. Their conversation shifted to the future. Kovalenko outlined plans to expand Project Prometheus, integrating AI systems developed by Lila to enhance the defense grid's capabilities. They also began recruiting volunteers for a new initiative, Operation Exodus. The goal was simple yet ambitious, to establish colonies on distant planets, ensuring humanity's survival even if Earth fell. We can't put all our eggs in one basket, Kovalenko explained. If the Zenari break through our defenses, we need somewhere else to go, somewhere safe. Lila agreed wholeheartedly, throwing herself into designing autonomous colony ships equipped with terraforming technology. It was a daunting task, but the thought of preserving humanity's legacy spurred her onward. Foreshadowing the future, as the first anniversary of the Vryn invasion approached, Earth began to resemble its former self, or at least a shadow of it. Cities rose from the ashes, powered by renewable energy harvested from the wreckage of alien technology. Children played in newly rebuilt parks, while adults worked tirelessly to restore infrastructure. Hope bloomed once more, tempered by the knowledge that darker days lay ahead. On the eve of the anniversary, Lila stood atop a hill overlooking New York City, now partially rebuilt and glowing with artificial light. Beside her stood Lieutenant Sarah Chen, who had assumed command of Earth's orbital defense forces after Hale's death. Together they watched as fireworks lit up the sky, celebrating humanity's resilience. "It's beautiful," Chen said softly. "But it's also fragile." Lila nodded. "Everything is. That's why we fight, for moments like this." Chen placed a hand on her shoulder. "And we'll keep fighting, no matter what comes next." Below them, the city buzzed with life, a testament to humanity's indomitable spirit. Above, the stars twinkled coldly, hiding untold dangers among their depths. The Zenari were out there preparing for war, but so too was Earth, arming itself with courage, ingenuity, and the unyielding will to survive. Closing scene back in the lab, Lila typed furiously, refining the code for the defense grid. Her eyes flickered occasionally to a framed photo of Commander Hale smiling confidently in uniform. She whispered a silent promise to him. "We won't fall again." Outside, the night stretched endlessly, vast and unknowable. Humanity had proven its strength against impossible odds, but the universe was vast and full of threats beyond comprehension. As the camera panned upward, showing Earth surrounded by newly constructed orbital fortresses, the final line underscored both triumph and uncertainty. They came to conquer. We chose to resist, but our fight is far from over.